So we're on the bottom of Yud Tes Amud Beis. So we're in the middle of discussing. I don't know if we even got to where this is relevant to the previous Gemara, that how we got to it, but we're talking about two rooms in the same house, and one of them has a mace in it, and the tumor would be stuck in the room with the mace, and the kain could go into the other room, but there's a little window in between the two rooms, which is a tefach by a tefach wide, and that's enough to allow the tumor to go from one room to the next. And we're talking about different things that can interpose, you can put into that window to be chaitzitz and make the window smaller, not to allow the tumor to go in. So we just said, we brought that if from a brisa, and I'm not sure if it's a brisa or a mishnah, that if you have a kupa malaya tev and a chavas malaya gregris, if you have a box full of hay or a barrel full of dried figs, you look at it, you take away the kli, because a kli is makabel tumah, and anything that's makabel tumah cannot be chaitzitz. And you look at what's left behind, the gregris, whether it's could stay by itself, that it could be chaitzitz. Okay, so that's what we're up to. So Zaktamar, the bottom line, Hai Chavas Hei Chidami. We said that when you have a Chavas full of gregris, you take away the Chavas. So you look at it if the Chavas is not there. Because since the Chavas is something that's Makabel Tumah, something that's Makabel Tumah is not Chaitz. It doesn't block the Tumah from going through. So now, the Gemara says, the rule is that a Kli Chares is Makabel Tumah from the inside, and it's not Makabel Tumah from the outside. So what's the case of this chavis that we're assuming is made out of charis? Either pumalabar, if the opening of this kli charis is into the room that doesn't have the mace inside of it. So that means the bottom, let's say it was a cup, right? Imagine a cup or a barrel that's in this hole, and the bottom of the barrel is in the room where the mace is. He gufa techetz. Then why do we say that we disregard the kli since it's makabel tumah? This kli is not going to be makabel tumah. The kli cheres ain't matam migabe. A kli cheres cannot be makabel tumah from its outside. It only is makabel tumah from its inside. Elo de pumulagav. So you have to say no. So it must be that's the other way around, where the opening of the barrel is toward the room where the mace is, and therefore the tumah can be metama the kli, and like we said, a kli that can be makabel tumah is not going to be chayitz. Diba is saying another possibility. We're not talking about where the dafka, the opening is toward the place where the mace is, and that's why the kli is makabel tumah. We're talking about a metal barrel, and a metal barrel can be makabel tumah from the outside, so it doesn't make a difference which way it's pointing. It itself would be makabel tumah, and therefore we disregard it as far as being chaytzitz. Meisvei. Back to Gemara. Brisa says asavim shetoshan. We're going to give a bunch of examples of things that a person could put into this chaloin, into this opening between the two rooms, and we're going to say some things that will be chaytzitz and some things that won't. So first, the things that will be chaytzitz. Asavim shetoshan. If someone cut grass and you put it into this opening, you put it into the opening, or if grass grew on its own, into that opening. Or if you had pieces of cloth that are less than 3 by 3, I don't remember which Masechta we had it, but we went through in great depth at one point the different rules of different types of cloth, what amount is considered to be a kli. I think we had maybe Legabi Shabbos, but something that's less than 3 by 3 doesn't have any chashivas. A limb or flesh that's hanging from an animal, from a behemoth or a chaya, and it's inside of that chalain. Or a bird that's sitting in that chalain, in that opening. Or a non-Jew who is sitting in the opening. Or a child of an infant that was born in the 8th month, after an 8-month pregnancy, which the rule is an infant from an 8-month pregnancy is not expected to survive. Vehamelach and salt, uklicheres, and a earthenware kli, the sefer Torah, and the sefer Torah, kulim ematim echalayin. All these many examples are mamayit echalayin. That means they do act to be chaytzitz, and they will stop the tumah from going from one room to the next. So let's just, before we go, the Gemara is going to go through each one of these things one by one. But the basic rule that we have to remember is, like we said, something which is makabel tumah is not chaytzitz. The rules for things that there are 3 kinds of things that can be makabel tumah. An adam, a full-fledged adam, meaning, like we're going to see in a minute, a Yisrael who is viable, who can live, and a kli, and an eichel, meichalim, food. All the things that we've mentioned, for one reason or the other, are excluded from those categories. And so therefore, all those things are not makabel tumah, and therefore they act to be chaytzitz. They will diminish the size of the opening and make it that the tumah can't go through an opening. Sorry? No. Aval, hasheleg, snow, v'habarad, or hail, v'haglid, frost, v'hakfar, and what was kafar? Rishlan.
Ice.
Ice. Yeah. V'hamayim, and water. Kulon ein mematim b'chalain. All these don't make the chalain smaller. All these basically are water, and water will quickly dissolve and go away. So they can't be memayit the chalain. It's not water is not a meichel, and it's not going to be memayit the chalain. So therefore, Sakumara, I mean, it doesn't make a difference whether it would be something that is makabel tumah or not. It's not going to be there for long. So now we're going to go through them one by one. So if you remember back on the previous plot, we had said the shita that those things it's only those things that will remain there. But something which has a use that someone's going to take away, even if it's something that's not makabel tumah, it won't be mamayit the chalain. It won't be blocked. It won't be chaytzit ne'at tumah. Because it's not permanent. It's not going to stay. So how could you say that grass? Granted that grass doesn't fall into any of the categories of something that's makabel tumah, and therefore it should be chaytzitz. But it's not something that's permanently there. Someone's going to take it away and feed it to his animals. So Gemara ba'afrasta. We're talking about a type of grass that doesn't taste good. It's poisonous. It's going to cause damage to the animal. Therefore, you won't feed it to the animal, and it gets left there. The Gemara, the Brayso continues, if it was grass that grew on its own, even the kashal shakalhu, that's l'chayra. Why should it be able to be blocked? We had learned. So this is where we finally get back to why this whole Gemara was brought. We had said that Zroyim, when you plant something near a wall, it damages the wall, therefore it can't be within 3 tvachim. So how can you say that this grass that grew on the wall is going to be left there? Since it's going to damage the wall, a person's not going to leave it there. So according to the Mandama that says anything that isn't left there can't be chaytzitz. This should not be able to be chaytzitz. Amarabba b'koisel churva. Rabba answers, we're talking about a kaisel that's not a high quality kaisel. It's an abandoned house. It could still be makabel tumah. You could still have tumah in it, but the person doesn't really care about the wall, so therefore he's not going to be motivated to remove the grass, even though it's damaging the wall. Rapapa mafila b'kaisel yishu. No, it could even be talking about a full-fledged kaisel. And we're talking about grass that's growing more than 3 tvachim away from the chaloin, and it's extending into the chaloin and blocking the way. So it's the roots of the grass of a plant that damages the wall. But the roots are far away, and it's just waving down, bending over, and blocking the opening. Now the Gemara continues. Another case that we had given were matloinius, which are pieces of cloth that are less than 3 tvachim by 3 tvachim. So they're not considered to be a beged. It's not a kli. But chazulei lekriya, the levusha. They could still be used to patch your clothing. So why do we say a person's necessarily going to leave it there that should be able to be chaytzitz? It's l'chayr not left there, because the person will still use it. So the Gemara, be samichta. We're talking about cloth that is very, very thick, and it's unable to be used to fix your beged. In fact, the mara b'chazul umna still could be used as a bandage when the umna is somebody who's a makas dam. He lets out blood. So such a person could use this as a bandage after you let out blood. So the Mariska, it's talking about where it's scratchy cloth, and therefore would be uncomfortable to use on someone's after your makas dam. We had learned back in Shabbos that there's different shiurim for different types of cloth, and cloth that is scratchy, which can't use for your clothing, it has to be even bigger in order to have a chashiva, says cloth. So why are we saying shalosh al shalosh? Even arba al arba should not be should up to arba and arba should not be chaytzitz, or should be chaytzitz because it can't be used. So we're not talking about that it's actually actual cloth that's very scratchy. It's not the cheap cloth that is always scratchy. It happens to be it's a regular cloth, but it has scratchy properties that it's very coarse and it is uncomfortable. But it's not the real cheap cloth. It has to be a minimum of arba al arba. Right to continue to if you have a piece of a limb or a piece of flesh of a behema that is hanging off that in the chaloin, that will be mafsik. Back to Gemara, Ark of Oslo. What does it help? It's attached to the animal still, and the animal's going to leave, and there won't be anything left. And that's according to this Mandama. This is all kashas on the Mandama who says that anything that's going to eventually leave will not be chaytzitz. So the Gemara b'kshura, it's where it's tied down. Shachet la. Okay, so it means it's tied down. The person eventually is going to shech this animal and then take away the meat. The tmeya, it's an animal. Tmeya animals. There's no reason to shecht it. Mazal lo nachri. Again, still, it's true you can't eat it. A yid can't eat it, but he'll shecht it and he'll give it to he'll sell to a nachri. B'chusha. We're talking about a very lean animal. It's not tasty, so therefore no one's going to eat it. In fact, the Gemara pasek shadi la klavim. While it's true, he's not going to sell it. He'll. This is like a aver that doesn't work, or a piece of flesh from the animal. You'll cut it off. It's not doing anything. You'll feed it to a dog. So since it's going to hurt the animal to cut it off, it's not going to do it. So this tied up behemoth tmeya that's kachash is going to just stay there forever with its limb in the window. The Brisa continues. We also said a bird that's in the chaloin is chaytzitz. In fact, the Gemara parayech v'azal. This bird's going to fly away, because therefore it shouldn't be chaytzitz. But kosher, it's tied down. Shachet lei, they'll shecht it and eat it. But tummy, it's a oif tummy. Mazvin lei, you'll sell it to a guy. The kalanaisa, it's a very scrawny bird that even nobody eats. Doesn't taste good. Yav lei liyanuka, but even if he's not going to eat it, it shouldn't be able to be chaytzitz because he'll give it to a child to play with. But misaret, it's talking about an animal that has claws and it's going to scratch a child. In fact, we said before this is one of these scrawny birds that goyim don't eat. Then how could you say that it scratches? These the scrawny birds don't have claws. Ke'ein kalanaisa. We're talking about what says, so we're not talking about exactly this particular variety of bird that is very scrawny. It's an animal that it's a regular, whatever it is, an eagle that happens to be very thin, and therefore there's nothing to eat, but it still retains its claws, and therefore you won't give it to a cotton. We said also an ovid kechavim shiyasha b'chaloin. If a guy is sitting in the chaloin, it blocks its chaytzitz on the tumah. Kai vazel, the guy is going to get up and leave. Bekafas, the guy is tied up. Asi chavre shadilei, but his friend will come and untie him. The mitzayra, the guy is a mitzayra, and therefore nobody's going to approach him to untie him. Asi mitzayra chavre sharilei, his friend who is also a mitzayra is going to come free him. Ella, so Gemara says it's not talking about where he's just tied up. Bechvushe malchus, he's imprisoned by the melech, so he's in shackles in this chaloin, and nobody's allowed to free him. Not he's mitzayra, but everyone's scared to let him go. Uben shmoinas hamunach b'chaloin. We said that an infant who is 8 days, I'm sorry, not 8 days, he's from an 8-month pregnancy. So we know the rule is that a child, an infant of an 8-month pregnancy can't survive. So therefore, he doesn't have the din of an adam that to be makabel tumah. In fact, the mother's going to come, the mother of the child is going to come and take him away. She has rachmanis on him. The Shabbos. We're talking about what's on Shabbos, the Tanya. Ben Shemaina Hareyu Ka'evan, a child of the 8th month, an infant from the 8th who was born in the 8th month, since he's looked at as if he's not going to survive, he's muksa, and you're not allowed to move him. It's very hard for us to picture this, right? I never heard that someone who's, like in the NICU, someone who has an illness that they're not allowed to survive, that they're muksa on Shabbos. It seems almost impossible to require that of the mother. Aval, the Gemara, so therefore the Brisa continues. Aval imay sheichalav, the mother can bend over the child, and feed the child and nurse sakana, because of the sakana, because it's very difficult for the mother when she's nursing not to feed. So that's the answer. The answer is this child is going to be it's on Shabbos, and therefore the child is muksa, can't be removed. The Brisa continued melach. We said salt. Chazile. Why do we say salt is chaytzitz? So salt is not considered a meichel, so therefore it's not makabel tumah. But people use salt in their food all the time, so someone's going to take it away. According to the Manda Amar, then anything that's not going to stay there is not chaytzitz. Why is the salt chaytzitz? Bimri rasa. We're talking about bitter salt. Chazil, you could still use it for tanning. The isba kaitzi. It's talking about where it has thorns or sharp objects in it, so therefore it will ruin anything if you try using it for tanning. Fact the Gemara, Kivin the Kasha Kaisel Shakla. We have learned in the previous Mishnah that you can't put salt within 3 tvachim of a wall because it's going to damage the wall. There's another reason why we're bringing this Gemara in. So how could you say that the kaisel is chaitzitz? It's something that's going to be taken away. The yasva chaspa, we're talking about where the salt is sitting on top of a shard of pottery, which protects the wall from the salt. So chaspa gufa techetz. If there's a shard of pottery and this haloin is exactly 1 tefach by 1 tefach, the chaspa will also reduce the opening. So the less beshura. This chaspa is too small, so it's something that's not. It doesn't have chashivas to be looked on its own as if it has any. It could be chaytzitz because it's disregarded. Kedetnan. Cheres kedelitim bein patzim l'chaveri. Legabe the din. I think this is legabe the din of Shabbos of carry. So if you carry something that has no chashivas, you're not chayiv. So this kli cheretz, the shear has to be enough to use to put between 2 slats of a louver to keep them apart. Zok Gemara, kli cheres. We said a kli cheres also is chayitz. It's chazila, but you could use a kli cheres. The mitnif. So someone's going to take it away. We're talking about the mitnif. It's disgusting. It was used, let's say, as a chamber pot, so therefore nobody's going to use it. Chazilom, but it could still be used to gather blood for someone who's a maker's dam, someone who lets blood. The menakav, it's talking about where it's whole, so therefore it's no use as for that purpose, and therefore people will just leave it there. Obviously, this klicharis is talking about where the opening is away from the mace, so therefore it's not makabel tum. Sefer Torah. Finally, we said a Sefer Torah is also chaytzitz. It could be used as a Sefer Torah. You can read from it. Bibali. We're talking about where it's worn out and therefore it can't be read. But boy geniza, but it needs geniza. How could you say it's going to be left there? You're going to take it away and bury it. So that's where it's being left. This is its final resting place. Amarav. You can make a mechitza out of anything. So now we're not talking about what's something that you put into a hole, but what you construct the entire wall that's blocking from the mace into the other room. So you can make that wall out of anything, from anything except for salt and fat. Shmuel says you can't make from melech. Amar Papa v'loy pligi. It's not a machlekes. Ha b'melech steinis. That which we said you can make a wall out of salt, that's talking about this very hard salt that stays together, like the kind that Light's wife was made out of. You make a pillar of salt, so you can make a wall out of salt and it will stick together. Ha b'melech is strukness. And the melech that we said you can't make a wall out of is like our salt, table salt, that it will disintegrate. You can make 2 piles of salt and put on top of it a kaira to make a tzurasa, not a tzurasa pesach, pasi biroy. So I forgot what it's called. What does Rashi say? In order to make a kaira to separate a mavui, to make it that you should be allowed to carry into mavui, but we see that you can use piles of salt, and the kaira that you put on top of it will hold the salt in place. In that case, the beam that's on top will keep the salt in place. Even table salt, since it's being held in place by the beam that's on top of it, it can be function as a wall. The mandam who says melech can be a wall, is talking about where there is a kaira on top to hold it in place. The man Amma says that it can't be. He's talking about without the kaira. I don't understand the mitzias, what that means, that putting a beam will hold salt in place, but that's what the Gemara says. You have to, we said in the Mishnah, you have to keep the rechaim 3 tvachim from the bottom part of the mill, which is 4 from the upper part of the mill, because it's indented by a tap. Zaktamara, my timer, what's the reason that this mill causes damage? Mishum tirya, because of the vibrations. When the mill goes around, it moves everything around. It will cause the wall to fall down. We say by a different type of mill that's pushed by a chamor, so it's much smoother. It doesn't have the same vibrations. So on that also we say it depends if it's from the upper or bottom part of the mill. It has to be 3 from the bottom, which is 4 from the top, even though there's no vibrations. So there's no vibrations on the donkey-driven mill. Ela mishum kala. The Gemara says no. It's different pshat, but essentially what the Gemara is saying is it's not the vibrations, it's the noise, meaning that the noise, noise also causes its own vibrations. It's not the direct vibrations from the mills grinding against each other, but the noise that the mill makes also, right? Sound waves are a type of vibration. You could break glass. That also eventually damages the wall, and that's caused even by a donkey-driven mill. An oven has to be 3 from the bottom part of the base of the oven, which is 4 from the upper part of the base, because it slopes up. The slope of a tanner goes down 1 tefach. And that's the reason why that's important to know, is that when you buy a tanner, you can expect to have that an extra tefach from the bottom, that the bottom sticks out over the top. Zok the Mishnah, a person shouldn't set up an oven inside a house unless there are 4 amas. We have like those oven range hoods to stop the heat from going up and damaging the ceiling on top. But they were not so sophisticated. They said you have to have 4 amas of space. Now, this is on the first floor. On the first floor, they would put the floor was made out of dirt. But if you're on the second floor, you have a floor made out of wood. You have to have 3 tvachim of plaster in between the bottom of the oven and the wood underneath to protect it so it shouldn't catch fire. Ubekira tefach. A kira is a smaller type of oven. It doesn't produce the same amount of heat. You only need 1 tefach underneath it. V'em hizik, v'shalom asher hizik. Now all these rules are a basis. This is what you're required to do, and you can call up the authorities if a person doesn't have it. You call up the zoning authorities, and they'll tell them you have to increase the height above your oven or the thickness of the floor underneath you. But it doesn't save you if your oven causes damage. Nevertheless, you still have to pay for it. It's not a get out of jail free card. Rav Shimon Aimer, Rav Shimon disagrees. He says, no, if a person follows the rules, then if damage happens, he's an einus. He didn't have to expect damage to happen, and he's potter. We had this on the previous block. A person shouldn't open a home-based bakery, a sheltzvayin or a dye, because either of these things you have to heat up. You obviously have to bake the bread, or you have to heat up the dye, and that will cause heat to rise up. Underneath a storehouse of his friend, where he stores, like we're going to see in the Gemara, he stores his tvua and his wine and his oil. The loyrefes bakar, you also can't put your stable for your animals underneath someone else's eitzer, because then the smell from the stable will ruin what he's storing there. But the truth is that the first 2 things a baker or a dyer, that the problem is the smoke goes up and damages what's on the second floor. And yayin, that won't damage, it'll make it smoky. It will make, people pay a lot of money to smoke things. So you'll have smoked wine, it will be very fancy. Everyone will pay extra for it. Avaloi ref is bakar, but not a stable. No one wants anything to smelling like a stable. We said that by a tanur, you have to have, he has arba amas. We said in a tanur, you we we said in the Mishnah, you have to have 4 on top of a tanur, and akira you have to have. I'm sorry, you have to have 4 tfachim. We said you have to have 3 tfachim underneath in the maziva, and you have to have 1 tefach by akira, which is a smaller. But we had said that a tanur needs 4, and akira needs 3. So it's both those shiurim for the floor underneath it are different. That's talking about a baker's oven, which burns hotter, so it needs extra space, it needs extra protection underneath. The Tana di done, kikira de nachtumim. So, in which case, and therefore, we said that if you have a kira, which is a smaller oven, that Bryce said you need 3 tvachim. That's similar to our tanner, which is stronger, and we said that it needs 3. Leyiftev chanus, we said you shouldn't open up a store shel nachtaimim underneath. Tanim ha'isa refes kedemes la'itza mutter. We had seen this brisa before. This is all if the person wants to put the refes bakar underneath a pre-existing itza. But if the refes was already there, if he already had a stable underneath, the guy can't build his icer on the second floor. Like we said, because this is dira shani. A person who's living in his house has a right to put what he wants to, as long as it's not damaging anyone. What happened if he already swept out the upper floor to make it into an icer, but he hadn't yet done it? Is it considered then that the icer was already there, and therefore the other person is not allowed to put a refes underneath? What if he added windows on the second floor in anticipation of making it into an itzer? Is that considered that he already was machzik that he's making an itzer, and therefore the person can't put something damaging underneath? If he placed underneath, in between the itzer and the refes or whatever, or whichever one of these damaging things underneath, he placed like a pavilion. So that either indicates that he's going to. This really, the Rishonim say that place is like a buffer. Does that allow him that he's allowed to place the damaging thing underneath? Mao, Bona aliyah al gabe beisai. Mao, if he made an aliyah, which indicates that he plans to use it as an oitzer, does that make it that the oitzer is already there and therefore he can't put the refs? Take the Gemara says in all these, it's not clear. Tamri we just said that all this oitzer, you can't put something damaging underneath an oitzer, and Rashi says that oitzer normally means for tvua and for shemen and for yain. But what if he wasn't planning to put those things? He was going to put dates and he was going to put pomegranates that are not as delicate. Is the other person precluded from putting his stable or his chanash on achtaimim? Teku. Again, we don't have an answer. The emes beyayin, we said, but yayin can go underneath smoky things, something that produces smoke, because it doesn't hurt it. Tana beyayin hitiru meshum mashrichai. A yayin it's mutter because it makes the yayin better. The loy refes bakar neshum mashricha, but not a stable because that makes it smell bad. I'm Rav Yosef, Heidi done, but our own wine is so delicate. I feel kutra d'shraganami kashale. Doesn't even have to be an oven. Even a candle is enough. Even a small candle is enough to damage it. Amrav Sheshus, aspasta karefes bakodamye. Aspasasa is a kind of fodder that smells very bad. That putting that on the bottom floor is like having a whole stable, and it will also ruin whatever is on the floor on top of that. Okay, we'll stop over here. Yasher Kayach, and have a great day.